And hello, Savannah. You are listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And you just tuned into Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. And what a great happiness message that was just by Mr. Paulicki, Robert Paulicki. I love to listen to those messages. I actually record them and listen to them later on. They're such great inspirational messages. So thank you for having tuned in. It is Wednesday, everybody. It's great weather out there. Always grateful for a great weather day out there. And on today's show of Real Estate Real Talk, I actually had a couple of shows prepared, but neither one of them we're going to be playing today. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up of some of the stuff that's coming up, because I had some pretty amazing interviews in the last couple of days with a few people, and we're going to be broadcasting those soon. But on today's episode, I wanted to focus a little bit more about discussing a couple of things that are probably useful or for the everyday home buyer. So I brought again with me this book called Home Buying for Dummies that I picked up for 99 cents back a couple of years ago at a Goodwill, and was kind of flipping through it to see if there's any kind of other topics that might be useful to the listeners here. And I came up onto chapter 8, where they talk about where and what to buy. And flipping through those pages, it basically was given some really good advice on some of the things that might be useful for the everyday home buyer, of where to select their property and what. And I'm going to be talking about those in my show today. But in the meantime, I'm going to be playing you a little break song here while I get my first set of information ready. And this one is by Disclosure, and it's called Moonlight. And some Moonlight here by Disclosure. Thanks for having stuck with me here for Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. And it is Wednesday afternoon. It is hump day. Thank you for having tuned in here. And today we're going to be talking about where and what to buy in terms of real estate. If you are an individual homeowner, you're looking to purchase your first home or maybe another home, some of the things that you can look at to make your buy a little bit more successful for the future, or maybe for resale value, whatever it is that your goal is. And what's your idea of the perfect car, the perfect job, and the perfect way to spend a day? So would you have said the same things 10 years ago? Probably not. So we're talking here about perfection. It's a moving target. It changes as you change, and that is also the case for real estate. So where the perfect home is concerned, there is really no such thing, and I can tell you that from experience. For one thing, few people have the financial resources to afford what they think is the perfect home. Even if you're among the fortunate few with bucks to burn, it's still highly unlikely that one home will be perfect for you from birth to earth. The home that's great in your 20s when you're footloose and fancy probably won't cut it when you're in your 40s, if you're married and raising a family. Fast forward another 20 years to when you're nearing retirement, you may want or need to move to a smaller home that's easier to maintain. I have heard this story so many times, and it's not even... it kind of goes without saying, but it is true. People will buy their home and they kind of go into it with their 30-year mortgages, and they're like, oh, I'm going to be here forever. And sure enough, 2-3 years later, they're like, okay, I got to move. There's a divorce, there's additional children, maybe there's a disability where a different home is required that's maybe on only one floor. There's so many things that can happen throughout your lifetime that your needs will just change. And so I always said there is really no perfect home for all your life. And there's really, just like there's no perfect time to have kids or get married or die, there's just no perfect time, there's no perfect home. But what you can do is get a little bit closer to the better home, the better choice anyways. And I do that with my engineering background by the process of elimination. And so in this chapter of this book, by the way, that I'm reading a little bit from and also commenting on my own, is called Home Buying for Dummies, a reference for the rest of us. And it's basically written by Eric Tyson and Ray Brown. It is the 3rd edition. I picked it up a while ago. Tips in here are pretty good, actually. And so I had a little bit of a series going on my show here with all the different things that they mention here. So kind of flipping through the pages. I didn't want to just read the book to you because you can pick it up and read it yourself. But I basically had selected a few topics here that I did want to address. And one of them was characteristics of good neighborhoods, because location is really, really the key for any kind of real estate. And case in point, the outgoing host right here actually had asked me what I've been up to. And I'm like, okay, well, right now I'm trying to get rid of this property that's in a not such a great area in West Savannah in Chatham County here. And it's been pretty much vacant from what I've learned from the neighbors for about 4 years now. So can you just imagine the kind of trash and vegetation that has grown around and into the house and is laying around? I mean, it's just atrociously looking. And sure enough, the city sent me a nasty note saying, take care of this or else. And I was on the phone with the inspector a couple days ago, just basically begging for more time. Had sent my lawn guys out there the other day, and they, with several people, were not able to fix the situation. Actually discovered a couple hornets' nests in some of the furniture that was laying around the house and sprayed it down. However, that did not remove the hornets' nests, and they could not continue their work. So I'm back at square one pretty much. I'm trying to figure out somebody who can help me with this before the city sends me another nasty gram. And, like I said, location is everything. If this property had been in a really nice neighborhood, it would have been more likely maybe, and I just say this, but it would have been more of an eyesore sooner to the neighborhood, because nicer maintained neighborhoods probably have neighbors looking out for their neighbors more because they want their properties. No, I'm just saying that, of course, I'm opinion based here. I'm not saying that West Savannah is any worse than any other area in Savannah, but this property was pretty much neglected for 4 years, and it's not such a great neighborhood, so it's very difficult for me to find somebody that actually wants to go out there and do the work. And if I had been on Tybee Island or someplace here on Whitmarsh Island, Wilmington Island, plenitude of lawn care people available out there in West Savannah. It's not that easy to find somebody. And by the way, if you're a lawn care person, feel free to send me a message, juliamspencer.com. I got a job. Anyways, that aside the point, we're not advertising anything here on the radio. But location is important, and this is one of the reasons. It's just very hard to not only find maybe workmen or people to work on your property if your property is in a bad area. It's also difficult to find tenants, and it's also difficult to find buyers, and it's also difficult to find any kind of contractors or maintenance people, or even people that want to list your property. For this particular property, I've actually already contacted several real estate agents, and not only did I not hear back from him, I didn't hear anything good or bad, but they actually didn't even respond to me. They didn't even want to look at this property. I also approached some other investors that are basically flippers and rehabbers and offered the property to them. Not interested. So it's a really bad thing. And I think I'm the only one in this city that actually sees the potential in this property. And the reason I do that is when you take everything away and you strip everything down, you kind of have to have this X-ray vision of what a property could look like. And the structure is very solid. It's cinder block construction, not wood, which can rot. So it's very solid, very sturdy, I guess, looking, and it's got a very good roof. So those are two very important things. It's pretty much just the structure and the land. But when you take everything else away, you got some really good foundational basics to work with. And that's the part that I like. I got it for very cheap, and I think it has a lot of potential. So let's talk a little bit about how to identify these neighborhoods, though. Apparently, or obviously, I'm telling you that this property right here that I'm talking about is in not such a good neighborhood. But let's talk about how can you identify a good versus a bad neighborhood. And that's kind of like some of the characteristics of good neighborhoods. So first off, let's talk about economic health. Nothing kills property values faster than a forest of for sale signs precipitated by corporate layoffs. And that is actually very true. If you are, let me just give you a case in point here. I had some property, I still have a property in Macon, Georgia, And one of the there's a couple of really big companies that probably about 10 years ago have made an exit from that area. And one of them, I believe, was a cigarette manufacturing company or so. It was a very big employer for that area. And the company moved away, sold the premises to another company, I don't even know which. And there was a lot of layoffs. And that precipitated a lot of for sale signs. Everybody that was working for the company either moved with the company or was laid off and was out of a job, couldn't afford their mortgage anymore, their real estate had to go. So for sale signs everywhere. Of course, supply is plentiful, demand stayed pretty much the same, which drove the prices down, which was a bad thing. And you don't want to, if you're looking to buy in that area, you might get a pretty good deal on real estate. But in terms of appreciation, one of the 5 pillars of how to make money with real estate, you probably are going to lose in the long term. And for my property in Macon, Georgia, that's exactly what happened. I bought the property, I believe, for $145,000 back in 2005. At the present time, it's worth about $90,000. So my mortgage payments have not caught up yet with the depreciation of the property and the fact that it's lost value over all these years. And that is pretty much the reason I still have a rental in Macon, Georgia. So those are the kinds of things that you need to worry about. Of course, in Middle Georgia, another big employer, we have the Robins Air Force Base. Everybody's always worried when they have Bragg coming around and always looking to see, is the base are going to reduce manpower or increase? In the case of Robins Air Force Base, it's always been kind of staying the same or increasing, so it's been a good thing. And so from that perspective, it's been kind of a little bit of a roller coaster there, but everything's kind of sort of stable still in that area. But Macon, nevertheless, has lost its value, so you end up being stuck with a property where you don't want to live, can't live because of your job, and you're stuck with a rental, and you're going to be a default landlord, which you may not want to be. So let's talk about some more characteristics of good neighborhoods. Another characteristic of a good neighborhood are the amenities. And I can talk a lot about the amenities here, actually. Amenities are special features of a neighborhood that make it an attractive, desirable place to live. Wide streets, bordered by stately oak trees, lush garden parks, ocean views, quiet cul-de-sacs, parking, and proximity to schools, churches, shopping, restaurants, transportation, playgrounds, tennis courts, and beaches are prime examples of amenities that add value to a neighborhood. Of course, few people can afford to buy in a neighborhood that has all these amenities, but the more of these perks a neighborhood has, the better. So, I guess it goes without saying that a property on Tybee Island is always going to be worth more than anything West Savannah or Garden City, let's say, for example. That's just because you're closer to the beach. Everybody wants to live close to the beach. If you're a beachfront property, there's yet another premium versus the properties on Tybee that are maybe further in the back. And all the other things people might not think about as much in terms of shopping, but in schools, of course, a lot of people that have kids always look at schools to see if that's a good school area that they're moving into, that the property is located at. So that's always a big thing. And shopping is always a big plus. If you don't have to drive 10 or 20 miles to go to the next grocery store, but instead it's right around the corner. Even better walking distance and restaurants, you have a plus there. This is why properties in a downtown area right here in Savannah are always be valued more than anything that's maybe suburbia, even though it might be less quiet actually. And talking about suburbia, quiet cul-de-sacs and parking, also good perks. I happen to have a property right here in Midtown Savannah with plenty of parking behind the house that belongs to the house for at least 4 cars even, which I've been really lucky to actually get that property. I want to say that the parking spots area in terms of land is probably the same size as the house land. So I'm really lucky with the parking. I have no issues there at all. But I do know of people that have looked at their houses and condos. I was actually initially thinking of purchasing right here in downtown Savannah. and there would be maybe 7 or 9 condo units inside a building. And when I asked them about parking, the answer was, well, whatever you can find on the street. And that's just not a really good answer, especially if you have a building with 9 units. There's going to be at least 9 cars that need some sort of parking for that, possibly even more if you have more people per unit living in there. And it's just going to make it very difficult, especially when there are events going on in the city or during the day when there's parking is just not very plentiful. So having a designated parking is always a great amenity to have for your home. And of course, green parks, oak trees, churches, transportation. Transportation is actually a big thing. Everything else is kind of like nice to have. I like it. But transportation is a biggie. Here in the city of Savannah, of course, we have the bus system, which can take you pretty much anywhere around Chatham County, more or less. You also have, and this is what a lot of people don't know, we have not just Chatham Area Transit, CAT, but we also have a couple of not-for-profit providers that give transportations to locations that are not touched by Chatham Area Transit. So if you actually live outside in the county where I live, Whitmarsh Island, you can always call something like one of those bus companies that can take you from A to B for a couple of dollars. I've done that before. And so you have a really good transportation system here in Chatham County. Now, in other areas, for example, let me give you another example. I lived in Okaloosa County in a city called Crestview in Florida. And if you don't have a car there in a subdivision, you're stuck in that house all day. You're not going anywhere because it's at least 5 miles to get to the next grocery store, probably about 20 to 30 miles to the next big city or larger city or employer, and you're pretty much stuck there. I mean, you can't be walking anywhere. It's just not possible. And always had that with visitors coming from Europe. They're like, oh, we don't need to rent a car. We'll just walk. I'm like, no, you're not walking. I'm going to be having to drive you, and that's a problem if I don't have that much time to host you. So in any case, transportation, good amenity, ocean views, of course, great areas. Also areas with good schools, which is what we're going to be talking about next. Cul-de-sacs. Cul-de-sacs are always a good thing to have because there's no through traffic if your home is located in a cul-de-sac, which basically just means at the end of a street, and it's quiet, and there's kind of a little bit deterrent of anybody driving through fast and maybe causing any kind of danger to animals, pets, or something that might be walking around, or kids. And that's always a good amenity for people that have small children. Of course, playgrounds, tennis courts, those kinds of things are good to have, not always used. Now, in my case, I live in a really, really nice condo complex with a pool and a workout room there, and I pretty much moved in there because of the amenities. I was just tired of living in my own home. I've had my own home since I was 23, a long time ago, so I was ready to actually live and not have to work at my house constantly. So those are some of the things that make up a really good neighborhood, and we're going to be playing a little bit of a break song here and a couple of announcements first. And I'll be right back with a couple of more tips for you on what makes a good quality neighborhood for you to purchase a home in.
WRUU 107.5 FM is all volunteer community radio. Tune in this afternoon. From 3 to 4, Rob Hessler and David Laughlin present Art on the Air, an interview program dedicated to the visual arts in Savannah. From 4 to 6, Louis Clousey and Matthew Adams present That Old Savannah Magic, a variety show featuring Savannah history, radio theater, interviews, and music. From 6 to 7, Barbara Humphreys and Albert Strickland present Voices of Resistance, giving voice to justice and peace activists with no other voice in the Savannah media. Find our full schedule at wruu.org.
Family Promise of Greater Savannah will present its second annual Fall Festival featuring 6 food trucks, a pumpkin patch, bounce houses, a dunking booth, rock climbing wall, and more. The event will take place on Saturday, October 20th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at St. Francis Cabrini Catholic Church on Middle Ground Road in Savannah. The event will benefit Family Promise of Greater Savannah, which helps homeless and low-income families achieve financial independence. For more information, call 912-790-9446.
Hey David, you know it's almost Halloween.
Yes, Rob, and you're looking for a Grinch costume, right?
No, that's for you. Actually, I'm going as the radio fairy.
The radio fairy? You mean like with wings, glitter, and pots of gold?
Sort of, although I think pots of gold are more leprechauns.
Whatever.
The radio fairy pays all of WRU's bills with big wads of cash. The radio fairy keeps community radio on the air.
Stop right there. The radio fairy is a figment of your voluminous exaggeration.
But coming up soon, if the radio fairy doesn't show up, we're going to have to ask our listeners for support. You hate the membership campaign, don't you?
Let the radio fairy go elsewhere. In exchange for cash, the radio fairy would demand our independence, our diversity, and our global soul.
Well, you have a good point there.
So maybe Grinch?
Maybe Grinch.
We're David Laughlin and Rob Hessler of Art on the Air, Wednesday afternoons at 3. Help WRUU's upcoming membership campaign be as successful as possible by increasing your gift from last year or aiming high for your first-time gift, when the time comes to give.
Learn more at WRUU's annual meeting and campaign kickoff party on Friday, October 5th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Starland Cafe during the always fun First Fridays in Starland. Local art, music, food, and fashion.
There's also more information at wruu.org.
And thanks for your support.
And that was some Ethereal by Sky High. Thanks for having stuck with me for Real Estate Real Talk here. My name's Julia M. Spencer, your host, and today we're talking about some of the things that make a neighborhood more desirable and will also kind of help you keep your real estate values high in case you follow some of the things that I advise here that would be a great choice for a neighborhood. And the next point I wanted to talk about is quality schools. I kind of have addressed that a little bit in my previous section. And you may not care how good or bad the schools are if you don't have school-age children, of course. However, unless you're buying in a remote retirement or vacation type community, you had better believe that when you're ready to sell your house, most prospective buyers with kids will be deeply concerned about the school system. I can tell you that for a fact. I have kids that are in school, and that's one of the first things I look for. I don't even look at any houses, and I wouldn't even look at any houses that are not in my desired school system. Of course, here in Savannah, Chatham County, we have this great lottery system where there's a couple of schools, charter schools and others, that you can apply for and actually get accepted to if you qualify and are accepted through the lottery system, and then your children will just be bused from your location to whatever your location. But I can tell you, case in point, my son actually was accepted to a really nice school all the way across town, and when we figured out the bus was going to take him 2 hours to get there and 2 hours back, and we kind of skipped that idea very quickly. After one day of school there, he just signed up for the local school that's right around the corner from us. So it's very important for home buyers what kind of school system you're located in. And believe it or not, you can actually go to Zillow or Trulia or one of the other websites, and they will actually give you a rating for the schools. I'm sure that the Department of Education has also a similar system where they rate schools according to, I guess, the success rates or the test scores of the children, so you can actually find out for yourself which are the good schools. For example, if you're in a new area. But I can tell you for a fact, if you move to a new area like Savannah or any other county or state, city, anything, it's going to be quite apparent to you very quickly as a parent which ones are the good schools and which ones are not the good schools. So you'll know that information very quickly, and then you'll be able to kind of decide what is the area that you should be looking for that is within that school zone. And a realtor or real estate agent that helps you find real estate should also be very well aware of what the school areas are. And you can even tell them that when you're looking for a piece of property to only consider the ones that are located in the area that you're looking and not any other ones. So schools, quality schools, very important. You should also care about the quality of nearby schools for more than just the resale value, but because good schools produce better kids, apparently, according to this book, and that clearly affects the quality of life in the community. Don't rely on test scores or someone's opinion when assessing school quality. Visit the schools, speak with the parents and teachers to get a handle on the schools in an area. I beg to differ with this book that good schools produce better kids. That I would say is up for debate. I wouldn't necessarily say that. However, I would definitely say that good schools produce an opportunity to produce better kids. I guess you should say that. That would be probably the better way to state this. So I kind of disagree with this book in this case. But in any case, good school system is definitely something that increases the value of the neighborhood where your property is located. And also, I would probably say access to the schools as well. So if you have some sort of system like here in Savannah where you can have access to the better schools via a bus system, some sort of lottery system, then that of course is also a plus and can actually diverse your looking for houses in different areas as well if you still have access to the good schools through some sort of public bus system. And that would be the next characteristic of a good neighborhood. I have a couple more here. I'm going to talk about one more. We're going to play another break song and then talk about two more. So the next one is low crime rates. That's pretty much self-explanatory, but most folks today are concerned with crime, of course. And well, they should be, given that crime rates in many parts of America are too high. As with schools, don't rely on hearsay or isolated news reports. Communities compile crime statistics generally by neighborhood. Call that local police department, visit its website, or check the town's reference library to get the facts. You can also, for example, the one thing that I was always concerned about with my kids, and if you have kids looking for real estate, is there any sexual offenders that live nearby me or any kind of sexual predators? And there is a website for that as well. There's actually several, and you can even sign up for some of them and get notified when somebody moves into your area, and you can get their address and their mugshot and their information and what they have been convicted of as a sexual offender. So I was always very aware of my neighborhood where the sexual offenders lived, if there were any, and I tried to avoid any of those areas at any cost. It's a very good thing. Has been instituted quite a few years ago due to some things that have happened, so it's a very good informational system that we have available online. And I do believe they actually can't live within the certain radius of schools. So if you're looking at real estate that's actually located really close to a school, I, for example, have a property that's within about a couple of 100 yards of a school. So I know there's not going to be any sexual offenders or anybody that could be threatening to my children living there. It kind of increases the value of my property. I feel it anyways. And I always make sure I point that out to anybody who looks to purchase my property or would purchase that property in that area for sure. So crime statistics, of course, very important. Again, if you go to, and I'm not advocating any specific websites, just the ones that I use, Zillow.com and Trulia have crime statistics. You can actually, on Trulia, I believe, you can actually scroll all the way down when you type in an address, and it will color code that specific neighborhood, little parcels around your property in specific colors. And of course, the more red the squares are, the more higher the crime rates are. And if it's a little bit more in a green or white area, then there's not really any crime in that area. So you can kind of see where the red spots are. And it gives you kind of sort of a visual idea of the crime in any specific area or any specific neighborhood. Now, mind you, if you ask a realtor, they're actually not really allowed to tell you whether you're looking in a good or a bad neighborhood. Hopefully, a good realtor will not recommend any properties in that area, but again, they are kind of precluded and from saying certain things that they can't say. They can't also make any racial annotations of, okay, this is a black neighborhood, this is more of a white neighborhood, this is where all the Asians live, this is where all the Jewish people live. They can't do that. And they shouldn't do that, honestly. I mean, I don't think that's a way to describe a neighborhood anyways, and we have laws against those kinds of things. However, if you go to a public servant, any kind of public servant, a police officer, or maybe a city official or a county official, you can ask them those questions, and whether they tell you or not, the answer is kind of like up to them, but they'll be able to help you to find out crime statistics in any case that you want to know. And that's also a very good thing to make up your mind on whether or not a specific neighborhood is a good neighborhood or not. And that brings us to the end of this particular characteristic. Next, I want to talk about the stability of a specific area and also pride of ownership. Those are also two specific characteristics of a specific neighborhood. And I'm going to play you a little bit of a break song here, one of my favorites. It's called Close to Me by The Cure. Happy tune here today, The Cure, Close to Me. And by the way, I will be also hosting a show from 10 p.m. to midnight this coming Sunday for Dave Lake. And I kind of chose the little theme here of playing you all happy tunes. And this might be one of the ones on my playlist on Sunday. So please tune in again then at 10 p.m. on Sunday, 10 to midnight. I'll be on. We'll be talking a lot less and playing a lot more music. But in this show, we're talking about real estate and anything and everything related to real estate. So I wanted to briefly just address two more quick topics on what makes a neighborhood desirable. And one of them is stability. Some communities are in a constant state of flux. Out with the old and in with the new is their motto. Imagine what would happen to property values if a junkyard were replaced by a beautiful park. How about the reverse? An ugly multi-story concrete parking garage appears where there was once a beautiful park. Check with the local planning department and a good real estate agent for the inside scoop on proposed developments in neighborhoods that you're considering. Of course, you can also check the local media and check newspapers, talk to neighbors, and get the inside scoop on all of that. This is what I actually always recommend for people that are moving into a new area, to not immediately go ahead and purchase a home. Go ahead and find some sort of rental for a year, maybe, or two, and kind of look around, get used to the area, find out what's around you, and figure out what all these new developments are, where the good schools are, where the crime areas are, where the low crime areas are, and kind of get a feel for what is actually a good price in your area. And that might take you quite some time. This is not something you can do in a week or two or with a short visit. My luckiness, when I came to Savannah, I actually never even looked for a home. I sent my then husband, ahead of me, and he spent 2 days looking at houses. He brought all the information home to me, and the first one that I saw that was on the islands, and for the right price, I said, let's take it. I didn't even look at it. I didn't even go inside. I wanted to see nothing about it. I knew it was a good area. I knew it was good schools, and I was not wrong. Whitmarsh Island, my home here, one of the ones I have on Whitmarsh Island now, actually I bought several more on that same island, has always been a great buy and has appreciated immensely in value, so I'm very lucky for that. So location is really, really key, and knowing what is all happening in an area is also key. Last but not least, one more point I wanted to address before I go off the air today, because we're almost close to being at the top of the hour again, is pride of ownership. So a home's cost has no bearing on the amount of pride its owner takes in it. Drive through any neighborhood, posh or modest, and you see in a flash where the folks live that are proud of their homes. A neighborhood filled with beautifully maintained homes and manicured lawns shouts pride of ownership. Property values sag when homeowners no longer take pride in their property. Avoid declining neighborhoods that display the red flags of disinspired owners, poorly kept houses, junk-filled yards, abandoned cars on the street, many absentee owners renting houses, high rates of vandalism and crime, and so on. Neighborhood deterioration is a blight that spreads from one house to another. Another thing that you can look for, actually that's not mentioned in this book, is when there's a lot of houses that are boarded up and or have like yellow signs from the city saying that the house has been condemned or has some sort of maintenance issue. I see a lot of those neighborhoods here in Savannah, actually, unfortunately, and it's almost sad driving through the neighborhoods, because you'll have a couple of houses that are so well maintained and people take so much pride. They're always there manicuring their lawns and clipping the roses and pruning, and then next to it is this dump. and it really should be taken away. It would be better if it was just an empty lot and not a house sitting there. And I feel sad for the owners to really actually try. And I watch neighborhoods too. As an investor, it's always a good thing to see where a neighborhood is heading or where a particular street is heading. You can see that with the progress of time, of course. You may not have that luxury if you're needing to buy right away, but take the time in any case. You will thank me for that later. You'll thank me when you see the appreciation of value in your property, and you'll also see that basically when you get to the point where you may have to sell your property, whether it then sells quickly or not. So it's definitely a good thing to look for in terms of at the characteristics of a particular neighborhood. So those are kind of the things to look for to make sure that your property is increases in value, or at least stays the same in value. I didn't always follow these rules. I kind of learned them the hard way, but I just wanted to go ahead and really briefly just summarize them for you. That way you have them. One, of course, I mentioned first was economic health. The amenities, quality schools, low crime rates, and stability, and of course, pride of ownership. Those are personal preferences aside. All good neighborhoods have these characteristics that I discussed in the show today. So look around, see whether your prospective house, your dream house, is located in the neighborhood like that. And of course, you can't change the location of your property. You can change your property, but not the location. So this is very important first step to find the perfect property for you. And that brings me pretty much to the end of my show here for today, Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. Thank you so much for listening. My show is on Wednesdays at noon. It goes from 12 to actually 12:06 p.m. after the happiness message until 1 p.m., 1300 military time. And I do sometimes also host music shows, as I will be doing this Sunday from 10 p.m. to midnight. Tune in. And I'll be hosting for Dave Lake, who's out of town. And for the last song that I'm going to sign off with here, I'm going to play a gospel tune, actually. And this is by Prince, who actually just brought it out posthumously past his death here, a record with some of the songs that were recorded by him in 1983, I believe, just on a cassette tape. And they just made a record out of it, several songs, and published it just this year. And some of the previously unpublished Prince songs, I'm going to go ahead and play one of those today. It's called Mary, Don't You Weep by Prince. And I hope everybody has a great Wednesday afternoon, and happy investing out there, and stay safe, and tune in again, and have a great Wednesday.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.